Welcome to All Grown Up Now, Tales of a Checkered Past. I'm Kenneth D. King, podcasting from my studio near Union Square in New York City. This podcast is an evolution of the tale, All Grown Up Now, A Friendship in 3 Acts. This is Season 2, and it's called Tales of a Checkered Past. It's a collection of short stories from my salad days on up to the present. In each podcast, another self-contained story will be presented. These podcasts will be broadcast bi-weekly, so you get 2 a month. Enjoy. This episode of Tales of a Checkered Past I call the blind date stories. Now, I've had many blind dates, more than I care to count, and all of them were unsuccessful, but these were the notable ones. The first blind date story I call Sweeney Todd, the Blind Date. I confess that I've never seen the musical Sweeney Todd, nor the film. Furthermore, I have no desire to do so. It's not because I'm squeamish. It's due to a disastrous blind date. I do know the story and all the songs, though. This is how I learned them. When I was much younger and living in Oklahoma City, some friends set me up on this blind date. They said the guy was lively, had a great personality, which means the same thing in the gay community as it does in the straight community, and that I would like him. Afterwards, I pondered, as I've done many times since after blind dates, about what my friends were thinking. How could they so misjudge the kind of guy I'd be interested in? But that's another conversation. My dream date and I met at a restaurant where I got my first look at him. I remember him being about my height, with thinning, sandy blonde hair, a round, pudgy face, and a plump, doughy body clothed in a t-shirt. Now, I tried not to judge, as I myself have battled weight issues over the years. I was just sure he was a lovely man. The shirt he wore read on the front, Sweeney Todd. On the back was The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. When we sat down to make conversation, I made the fatal mistake of asking about the shirt. I had no idea of what it was about. That particular musical hadn't gotten to Oklahoma City yet. Over the next 2 hours, he proceeded to perform the entire musical, dialogue, and songs from memory. There was no shutting him up, as he never seemed to take a breath. This was just a manic, steady stream of performance. I was trapped. He was a runaway train. I had to just step aside and let him pass by. While I was subjected to this barrage, the subject matter of the musical gave rise to several fantasies I had about shutting him up. But we were in a public place. I didn't slit his throat, which I wanted badly to do. So, when people ask me if I've seen Sweeney Todd, I reply that I have in a manner of speaking. But when I hear any of the music, I can still see the oblivious expression on this guy's pudgy face and feel the desire to slit someone's throat. The next blind date story is called Chicago, Not the Musical. A disclaimer here. I seem to have bad luck with Chicago. There have been many incidents over my career and in my life where Chicago has played a very unpleasant part of the story. So to those of you in Chicago, I'm sure it's a lovely city. I don't care to go there. The story. I went to Chicago on a teaching gig. It was actually Barrington, a suburb. The shop owner made the decision to not get me a hotel room, something I insisted on. Instead, I stayed the night before the gig in her spare bedroom in her house. Now, this is a really creepy gal. She was old. She had a husband who looked to have had dementia, The entire house smelled of mildew and urine. It had a Bates Motel vibe, so I didn't get a wink of sleep with the husband aimlessly entering the room at all hours. I stayed there Friday night, but vowed to find other lodgings after my Saturday teaching gig. While I was in Chicago, a friend of mine from San Francisco set me up on a blind date with a friend of hers. We were to meet on Sunday, so we spoke on the phone on Saturday. During the call, we decided where to meet and what time, and then I asked him if there was a bathhouse in Chicago. "Well, I'm a little put off that you asked me that question," he huffed. "I didn't ask if you went to the bathhouse, but if you knew whether one existed," I responded. "I need a cheap place to stay the night." The answer was yes, and that's where I ended up staying. But that's not important to the story. The next morning, we had arranged to meet in a diner somewhere in Boys Town. As usual, I arrived first. He entered the diner, and oh my God, what a dish. He was incredibly good looking. But when he realized that I was his date, he was incredibly disappointed, and he didn't try to disguise the fact. So yes, it was a long brunch. He let me know just what a big wheel he was, a mover and shaker, and far above my station in life. He also let me know in a not-so-subtle way that he did not date below his attractiveness level. This is why I joke that the pretty boys mate with their own kind. At one point in this torture, he got up to go to the men's room. When he was out of sight, the waitress, who looked like someone's mom, came up, put her hand on my shoulder, and said, "This isn't going well, is it, honey?" Humiliated, I said, "No, it's not. I'm leaving, and he's paying." And with that, I bolted for the door. The postscript to this story is that I ditched my plans to look at the architectural wonders of Chicago and headed directly to the airport. I went up to the counter and told the guy at the counter just what had happened and said, "I want to go home now. How can I make that happen?" He took pity on me and changed my flight with no charge. And he also apologized for the bad behavior of the other jerk. Now, some of these blind dates felt like they were about 8 years long, and I just couldn't wait to get them done. Others, happily, were short. These are a couple of those. The blind date that is the second shortest I had was in Paris, of all places. I was set up with this guy, and it was arranged that we would meet in a bar called the Banana Cafe in the Les Halles district. As usual, I got there first. I told him what I would be wearing. I was sitting there when a rather nice-looking blonde guy entered. He recognized me, came over, sat down, and we began chatting. After a few minutes, he stood and said, "Excuse me," and walked out the door. Puzzled, I wondered, did he have to feed the parking meter? Did they have parking meters in the evening in Paris? After about 20 minutes, I decided, he's not coming back. Vive la France. The shortest blind date in history should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. It clocked in at 47 seconds, and it involved a members-only jacket. Now, a note to the younger listeners. Back in the day, in the mid-70s, the members-only jacket, which came in other vile colors like dead beige and toast, was worn by a certain kind of guy. This guy also wore a mullet, drove a Camaro, and his girlfriend had camel toe. He would generally have the guy version, which was called moose knuckle. You get the picture of the kind of guy who wears a members-only jacket. That said, to the story. A well-intentioned friend yet again set me up with a guy who, on the phone, said he looked 52 but was 12 years wiser. Okay. We set a date to meet at Brainwash, which was a cafe laundromat on Folsom Street near my studio in San Francisco. I, as usual, arrived first, looking good in my new Matsuda jacket, my alligator shoes, a black cashmere turtleneck, indigo jeans, my hair freshly bleached, and I sat at my favorite table with my coffee latte and my copy of Vanity Fair in hand. I was looking good and feeling gorgeous. This guy came into the cafe. He seemed to be looking for someone. This was the dream date. I motioned him over. He sat down at the table and immediately made a rude comment about what I had on.
What?
This pissed me off. I leaned over the table and put a finger in his face and said, "Listen, Buster, you are wearing a powder blue members-only jacket. You have no standing to comment on what I'm wearing." He got up and left. The people at the next table applauded. The date had clocked in at 47 seconds. You know, they say the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It took me years and years to finally give up blind dates, but I finally did. And there you have it. Thanks for listening. You can get the audiobook All Grown Up Now on iTunes, Audible, and Amazon, or from my website, allgrownupnow.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. If you have any questions, you can reach me through the website, allgrownupnow.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Kenneth D. King, on Facebook at Kenneth D. King Design, or on my main website, KennethDKing.com.